The millionaire's wife tried to humiliate the saleswoman by speaking Russian, certain that she wouldn't understand. What seemed like mere social cruelty hid a mistake that would change destinies and reputations. In silence, the employee listened to every word and decided to respond at the right moment, without any fanfare. Before we continue, subscribe to our channel and tell us in the comments which city you are watching us from. Lauren arrived at the store at 8 o'clock on a rainy Monday morning in New York City. The worn-out backpack slung over her shoulder contrasted with the polished marble floors and the chrome racks that reflected the cold light of the ceiling spots. She didn't seem to notice. She greeted the receptionist with a discreet nod and headed to the employee locker room, where she exchanged her wet coat for a black blazer lent by the store. It wasn't the official uniform, the one the other saleswomen wore with pride, but it worked. No one had commented on it yet. No one comments on those who don't matter yet. The Vanderbilt atelier occupied 2 floors of a commercial building on Madison Avenue, with window displays showcasing international designer pieces and a clientele that didn't go there just to buy clothes. They went there to be seen, to confirm their own status, to breathe the rarefied air of someone who can afford to spend $1,500 on a silk blouse. Lauren knew that kind of place, not because she had frequented them as a customer, but because she had worked in them, in other times, in other cities, in other languages. But she kept that to herself. The manager, Sylvia, was in her late 40s, with impeccably platinum blonde hair and a smile that vanished whenever customers weren't around. She watched Lauren with that look that measures from head to toe, searching for flaws, misfits, signs that this hiring had been a mistake. The backpack, probably, or the hair tied back without vanity. Perhaps the fact that Lauren wore no makeup other than a neutral lipstick. Sylvia said nothing that first day, but the discomfort was there, hanging in the air like perfume that was far too expensive. The other saleswomen, Rachel and Jessica, were already on the floor when Lauren came down. They were talking quietly near the accessory counter, casting quick glances toward the newcomer. Rachel was tall, wore heels even at 8 in the morning, and had the air of someone born knowing the price of everything. Jessica was younger, eager to please, always ready to laugh at Sylvia's jokes and agree with anything the manager said. Lauren didn't try to force her way in. She knew that forced integration never works. Instead, she began to walk through the floor slowly, lightly touching the pieces, adjusting crooked hangers, straightening turned-over tags. Her eyes captured everything. The lace blouse hidden behind a flashier coat. The midi dress that no one had noticed because it was at the wrong height on the rack. The accessory section that looked like poorly organized stock, without visual hierarchy, without an invitation to impulse buy. She didn't change anything that first day. She only observed. She observed the flow of customers, how they entered, where they stopped, what they touched, what they ignored. She observed Rachel assisting a middle-aged woman who wanted something for a charity dinner, offering expensive pieces without asking what the client actually needed to convey at that event. She observed Jessica chasing after a young girl who clearly wasn't going to buy anything, wasting energy on someone who was only there to take photos for social media. At the end of the shift, while tidying the fitting room that a customer had left in shambles, Lauren heard Sylvia commenting to Rachel near the register. Her voice was low, but not low enough. "It's strange, isn't it? She doesn't have the profile we usually hire here. Vanderbilt has always been about image. I don't know what the board was thinking." Rachel murmured something in agreement. Jessica laughed. Lauren continued folding the cashmere scarf that had been tossed on the floor, putting it back in its place carefully, as if she had heard nothing. She knew that kind of talk. She knew the game. She knew that reacting too early would be the biggest mistake. In environments like this, competence revealed prematurely doesn't generate admiration. It generates fear, and fear generates attacks. In the following days, Lauren maintained the same posture. Discreet, silent, efficient without noise. But she began to make small adjustments. She changed the position of an entire collection of handbags, placing the most versatile ones at eye level and the special occasion ones lower down. She reorganized the internal display of scarves, creating a visual narrative that hadn't existed before. She suggested, in a calm voice and without insisting, that certain pieces that had been stuck for months be displayed alongside others that sold quickly, creating a combination that made sense. Sylvia frowned whenever she passed near Lauren, as if trying to decipher a code. The changes were working. The bags that no one looked at began to sell. The scarves became impulse items, but no one commented on it. No one said thank you. They only watched, with that growing unease of someone who realizes something is different, but doesn't want to admit where the difference came from. It was on Thursday of that first week that Lauren assisted Mrs. Beatrice, a long-time client of the store, who came in looking for a gift for her daughter-in-law. Rachel was busy with someone else, Jessica was on the phone, and Sylvia was in the back room. Lauren approached with that discreet manner of hers, asked about the daughter-in-law, about her style, about the occasion. She listened more than she spoke. Half an hour later, Mrs. Beatrice left with 3 items, a wide smile, and the contact card that Lauren had discreetly slipped into the bag. The following week, Mrs. Beatrice returned. She asked for Lauren. She said her daughter-in-law had loved the gift and that she wanted to buy something similar for herself. Rachel was at the counter when she heard the request, and her face darkened. Jessica exchanged a look with Sylvia. That wasn't a compliment. It was a threat. Because in places like this, a customer returning and asking for someone specific is not a sign of goodwill. It's a sign that the power balance is shifting, and no one there wanted anything to change. The following weeks brought silent tension. Lauren remained discreet, but the numbers didn't lie. Sales in the reorganized sector went up. Customers asked for her. That lady with her hair tied back, the one who actually listens. Sylvia mentioned the results in the meeting with a forced smile, but her eyes sought Lauren with irritation. Rachel crossed her arms when Sylvia commented on maintaining the visual standard. It was a message. Jessica merely nodded. Lauren said nothing. She knew she was being watched now, not with admiration but with suspicion. In environments like this, discreet success is dangerous. It was on a rainy Thursday that Rachel approached. She feigned interest in a piece Lauren was adjusting. Have you worked with this before? In other stores like this? I've worked in sales, yes. Here in the States? Because your way is different. You don't have that style we usually see. The message was clear. Lauren didn't fit in. Everyone has their own way. The important thing is the result, isn't it? Rachel smiled, but it was a sharp smile. Yes, results are important, but so is image. Vanderbilt is clear about that. Our clients expect a standard. Do you understand? Lauren understood. This was about hierarchy, about place. She nodded and went back to work. Rachel walked away, sighing. What no one knew was that Lauren had 6 years of experience working in luxury boutiques in Europe. She had served heiresses actresses and diplomats' wives. She learned to read people by the way they touched clothes, how they avoided mirrors. She knew how to identify who bought out of necessity, out of emptiness, or because they didn't know what to do with their money. But she didn't reveal that. Not yet. In London years ago, she had been promoted too quickly. She showed results. She impressed the owners. Because of that, she was sabotaged by the manager. Items went missing, customers complained, documents disappeared. One day they accused her of selling information to competitors. There was no proof, but proof wasn't needed. A tarnished reputation is hard to clean. She was fired, slandered, and had to start over. That's why she worked quietly now. She observed. She waited. The difference between being valued and being destroyed wasn't in talent. It was in timing. But her way of serving was too different. She didn't sell products. She sold solutions. She built trust. She created bonds that brought customers back. Mrs. Beatrice returned more often. A businessman bought a complete suit after a half-hour conversation. A lawyer left with 3 sets and her personal number. Sylvia began to ask investigative questions. How do you get them to come back? Do you have a specific technique? Lauren gave vague answers. Inside, she felt the change in the air. The discomfort turned into something dense, dangerous. It was Jessica who let it slip one afternoon in the break room. Rachel and Sylvia were out. Rachel thinks you're keeping the good customers for yourself. She mentioned that yesterday. Lauren processed this. So that was it. Internal sabotage. The narrative that would justify any future action. And you? Do you think that? Jessica looked away. I don't know. Sometimes it seems like you know things we don't. How do you always get exactly what the customer wants? It's not magic. It's attention. Jessica didn't answer. She finished her coffee and went back to the floor. Lauren stayed there, feeling the walls closing in. She had seen this before. She knew how it ended. The question wasn't if they would try to get rid of her. It was when, and how she would respond. The woman entered the Vanderbilt atelier like someone entering conquered territory. Eleanor Sterling didn't need to announce who she was. Her last name did that for her. Married to Marcus Sterling, owner of an empire that ranged from shopping centers to hotel chains, Eleanor moved through the highest circles of New York with the ease of someone born knowing the price of power. She wore a Chanel suit, an Hermes bag, and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Sylvia practically ran to receive her. Mrs. Sterling, what a pleasure to see you again. The summer collection just arrived. I have wonderful pieces set aside especially for you. Eleanor nodded with studied elegance, but her eyes were already scanning the room. She wasn't there to buy. She was there to evaluate. Lauren noticed this immediately. She knew that kind of visit. The way Eleanor touched the pieces without real interest. How she observed the employees with the same attention she would give to a poorly positioned painting. She wasn't a customer at that moment. She was an inspector. Rachel joined Sylvia, the two forming a sort of reception committee. Jessica stayed in the back, trying to look busy but clearly nervous about the woman's presence. Lauren continued organizing a rack of dresses in the corner of the floor, but she kept her peripheral attention on what was happening. Eleanor circled the store for a few minutes, making vague comments about fabrics and cuts. Then, as if by chance, her gaze landed on Lauren. There was a brief, almost imperceptible pause, but Lauren felt it. It was the look of someone identifying something out of place, something that needed to be tested. This employee is new, isn't she? I don't remember her from the other times I've been here. Sylvia swallowed hard before answering. Yes, Lauren has been with us for a few weeks. She's still in her adaptation period, but she's been working very hard. The way Sylvia said adaptation sounded like a euphemism for she doesn't fit. Eleanor walked slowly to where Lauren was, feigning interest in a dress hanging there. Lauren, is it? What a common name. Where are you from? Lauren looked up, keeping her expression neutral. I was born right here in New York, ma'am. And how long have you worked in fashion? A few years. Helena smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. A few years. How vague. Have you worked in other stores of this caliber before? I've worked in boutiques, yes. Here in the States. Lauren made a calculated pause. Also abroad. The answer sparked something in Eleanor's eyes. Curiosity mixed with suspicion. She held a linen blazer, examining the stitching with experienced fingers. Abroad where, exactly? Paris? London? Europe, yes. How interesting. Then you must know the big brands, the international standards. You must know what real luxury is, shouldn't you? There was venom in those words, but spoken with such elegance that it sounded almost like a compliment. Rachel and Sylvia exchanged looks. Jessica pretended to check her phone. Lauren simply nodded, without committing herself. It was then that Eleanor changed the tone of the conversation. She picked up a silk scarf, held it against the light of the window, and, still looking at the fabric, began to speak. But not in English, in Russian. The words came out fluidly, loud enough for everyone to hear, but in a language she was certain no one there understood. She said, staring fixedly at the fabric, "This store is decaying. They hire just anyone off the street now. No education, no class, not the slightest refinement. It's embarrassing to have to share the same environment with this kind of person. They make real customers feel uncomfortable." Sylvia smiled without understanding. Rachel seemed impressed by the supposed sophistication. Jessica looked on with admiration. Eleanor continued, now picking up another piece. These saleswomen with no background try to imitate what they see, but they don't fool anyone. You can see from a mile away that they don't belong in this world. They are like monkeys dressed as people. They serve only to keep the floor from being empty. The silence that followed was filled only by the soft sound of the ambient music. Eleanor waited. She waited for the lack of understanding, for the confirmation that she had just humiliated someone without that person even knowing. She waited for the absolute power that comes from being protected by a language barrier. But then Lauren spoke. In perfect Russian, with the accent of someone who had lived where that language was spoken daily. You are right to observe that luxury environments require a standard. But perhaps true refinement lies in recognizing competence where it exists, not where appearance suggests it should be. Simians imitate. Intelligent people choose when to reveal what they know. The air in the store changed instantly. Eleanor turned pale. Sylvia's eyes widened. Rachel let out a small gasp of shock. Jessica dropped her phone. Eleanor's smile disappeared completely, replaced by an expression Lauren knew well. It wasn't anger. It was worse. It was the look of someone who had just lost control over a situation they thought they dominated. You understand Russian? It wasn't a question. It was a realization loaded with something dangerous. Lauren simply held her gaze, without arrogance but also without backing down. I lived in St. Petersburg for 2 years. I worked in luxury boutiques there as well. Eleanor grabbed her bag with a sudden movement. The polite smile returned to her face, but it was cracked at the edges. How fascinating. A saleswoman with so much international experience working in a neighborhood shop. There must be an interesting story there. Sylvia, I'll take this blazer. You can have it delivered. I have an appointment now. She left without looking back. But Lauren knew that exit wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Because people like Eleanor Sterling didn't lose small games. They simply changed the rules until they won. Sylvia approached Lauren as soon as the door closed. Her face was red. You could have told me you spoke Russian. Mrs. Sterling is a very important client. The wife of one of the biggest businessmen in the city. You embarrassed her. Lauren carefully put away the dress she had in her hands before answering. She tried to humiliate me, thinking I wouldn't understand. I simply made it clear that I did. Sylvia took a deep breath, as if counting to 10 internally. It doesn't matter what she said. What matters is that customers like her keep this store open. And now she left here bothered, because of you. Rachel joined the conversation with that tone of someone who always knew something like this would happen. I told you she didn't have the right profile for this place. People like that always cause problems. Lauren didn't answer. She just grabbed her backpack and went to the small bathroom in the back. She locked the door, leaned her hands on the sink, and took a deep breath. She had revealed one of her trump cards, and she knew the price of it. She knew the pattern. She knew what was coming next. The hunt had begun. The change started the next day, subtle at first. Lauren arrived and found her drawer rummaged through. Nothing was missing, but someone had been looking for something. Sylvia passed her without saying hello. Rachel ignored her. Jessica avoided her gaze. The environment froze. In the morning meeting, Sylvia announced new rules about maintaining discretion, not confronting customers, and respecting social hierarchy. She didn't mention Lauren, but everyone knew who it was directed at. Proper posture is fundamental. Our clients expect reverence, not familiarity. Not everyone here has the background to understand these nuances. I will be monitoring every interaction more closely. Lauren knew the script. Social isolation first, then formal criticisms. Finally, a justification for termination. The following days confirmed it. Customers who asked for Lauren were redirected. She was put on the empty shifts. Her suggestions were ignored. Sylvia noted everything in a notebook, looking for documentable errors. On Friday, Lauren was called to the office. Sylvia and Pamela from HR were waiting with a folder of documents. The atmosphere was formal, cold, intimidating. We've received comments about your posture. Customers mentioned feeling uncomfortable. We need to talk about this. Sylvia pushed a formal warning forward. Lauren read it. Inappropriate conduct, lack of alignment, need for behavioral review. Nothing concrete. Which customers complained? Pamela exchanged a look with Sylvia. The complaints were confidential. The important thing is for you to understand the gravity and commit to changes. Lauren knew there were no real complaints. That was just the first step of a process already decided. But she signed. She needed time to do what she knew how to do. That night she didn't sleep. She stayed at her table with her laptop open. During her weeks at Vanderbilt, she hadn't just been selling. She had been observing, studying, identifying invisible patterns. She began to type. Basic operational problems. Poorly managed inventory. Pieces stuck for a year taking up space. Margins compromised by bad deals. Flaws in cash control. Discrepancies between customer volume and recorded values. Then, strategic problems. Vanderbilt was part of the Sterling Group. There were plans for international expansion mentioned in conversations, but the numbers didn't support it. The operation was barely paying for itself. She worked until dawn. She cross-referenced memorized data, observational estimates, and patterns she knew from Europe. The result? 20 pages. Technical, precise, impossible to ignore. It wasn't a rant, it was a diagnosis. She printed it, put it in a brown envelope, and on Monday went to the Sterling headquarters in Midtown. She didn't try to go in. She left it at the reception with a simple note. For Marcus Sterling, urgent. Operational analysis of Vanderbilt Atelier. Then she went back, knowing she had played her last card. The following week was the worst. Sylvia treated her as if she were invisible. Rachel made malicious comments. Jessica asked quietly what Lauren had done to deserve that. Lauren smiled tiredly and said that sometimes it's not about deserving. It's about being in the wrong place when someone powerful needs a target. On Thursday, Sylvia called her again, alone this time. Her face was set, her tone satisfied. Her valuable piece has disappeared. An Italian leather coat, $5,000. The cameras show you in the stockroom yesterday after hours. You were the only one with access. Lauren felt her stomach tighten, not because of the accusation, but because of the confirmation that they would go that far. I went to get boxes to organize the back stock. You asked me to do it yourself. Sylvia pretended to think. I remember the need for organization. I don't remember authorizing access after hours. Regardless, the coat is gone, and you were the last one there. We are going to investigate internally. Until then, you are suspended. Get your things. Lauren didn't argue. She didn't beg. She didn't defend herself before someone who didn't want to listen. She stood up, grabbed her backpack, carefully left her badge on the table, and walked out. She passed through the floor where she had made a difference without being recognized, and walked through the door for the last time. Outside, the city remained indifferent. She walked to the bus stop, sat on the cold bench and waited. She didn't cry. She didn't feel like a victim. She just waited. Because she knew that somewhere, a powerful man was reading a report that would change everything. The call came 3 days later. Lauren was at home when her phone rang. An unknown number. Lauren Mendez? This is Robert, Mr. Marcus Sterling's assistant. He would like to speak with you. Today, if possible, at 3 in the afternoon. Lauren looked at the clock. It was 10 in the morning. Her heart raced, but her voice came out steady. I can go to the office. What is the address? Robert gave her the information and hung up. Lauren stood there processing. He had read the report. This could be an opportunity, or a trap. At 2:40 she was in the lobby of the building on Fifth Avenue, glass and steel reflecting the grey sky. Robert received her, his suit impeccable. Mr. Sterling will see you now. He asked for total privacy. There will be no secretary or assistants, just the two of you. Lauren nodded. Robert led her to a room with a panoramic view. And then Marcus entered. In his late 50s, grey hair, discreet glasses. He didn't smile. He gestured for her to sit. Your report was interesting, very interesting. Where did you get this data? Observation, experience, market knowledge. I worked for 6 years in luxury boutiques in Europe, London, Paris, St. Petersburg. I learned to identify operational flaws by what people don't say. Marcus picked up the document, flipping through the pages. You point out discrepancies in cash control. You suggest systematic losses. That is serious. It's not an accusation. It's an observation based on flow patterns versus records. I could be wrong, but the numbers don't add up. And the deals with suppliers? How did you have access? I didn't have formal access, but on the shop floor you hear conversations. You see documents on desks. You notice when the margin doesn't make sense. I connected the dots. Marcus took off his glasses, cleaned them, and put them back on. He was evaluating her. You know you were fired yesterday. Suspension followed by cause. Accusation of theft. Lauren held his gaze. A false accusation. I knew it would happen after the episode with your wife. People in positions like hers don't need proof, only an annoyance. Are you saying my wife orchestrated your firing? Your wife tried to humiliate me in Russian, thinking I wouldn't understand. When she found out I spoke the language, she felt exposed. Exposed people react, sometimes by eliminating the threat. Marcus remained silent. Then he stood up and walked to the window. Eleanor mentioned you. She said there was a problematic employee. She suggested I intervene. I didn't imagine it was the person who sent this report. He turned around. Why do this? Put together such a detailed document about a store you've already been removed from. What do you want? Lauren took a deep breath. Nothing. I saw real problems compromising an operation that could be better. I did it because I am competent, and I cannot stand waste. It wasn't revenge, it was professionalism. Marcus came back, sat down, and opened the report to a specific page. Here you talk about international expansion. How do you know about that? I heard mentions. I recognize the pattern. Businessmen like you don't keep isolated boutiques. You keep them as brand tests for larger operations. Vanderbilt is a pilot, but it's failing in the fundamentals. If you expand now, you replicate the problems. Marcus closed the report. You're right. We have plans for Miami and London. Vanderbilt was supposed to be the model, but the numbers aren't coming out as expected. My consulting firm didn't identify why. You, in weeks, mapped out what they didn't see in months. Because they analyze reports, I lived the floor of the operation. Marcus crossed his fingers. I'm going to investigate the theft. If it was planted, someone will answer for it. As for the report, I want you to develop this. A complete analysis, restructuring, a correction plan. Can I count on you? Lauren felt something change inside her. Recognition. Finally. You can, but I need real access. Data, documents, conversations with suppliers. I don't do serious work halfway. You'll have everything. You'll report directly to me. Robert will give you the contacts. And your wife? Marcus paused. Eleanor and I have a marriage of convenience built over 20 years. She opened social doors, made connections. But business decisions have always been mine. If she crossed boundaries, I will make it clear that interference in operations is not acceptable. He extended his hand. Lauren shook it firmly. Welcome back, Lauren. This time, for real. The corporate event was scheduled for the last Friday of November, an imposing ballroom at the Plaza Hotel with a view of Central Park would host investors, international partners, and luxury sector businessmen. The official goal was to present the Sterling Group's expansion plans. The real goal, which few knew, was to show a course correction after internal problems had been identified. Lauren arrived early. She wore a sober but well-cut suit, her hair down for the first time in months, and a posture different from the invisible saleswoman she had been. Robert received her with a nod and went over the final details. She would present a summary of the problems found and the proposed solutions. 20 minutes of speaking, simultaneous translation available for foreign partners. Marcus trusted her, but the environment would be hostile. Eleanor would be there. The ballroom began to fill. Executives in dark suits, women in designer dresses, conversations in English and French mixed with others. Lauren saw Sylvia entering, accompanied by Rachel. The two stopped when they recognized her, confusion visible on their faces. Before they could approach, Robert discreetly intercepted them, directing them to seats far from the stage. Marcus opened the event with a corporate speech. He spoke about vision, expansion, and a commitment to excellence. Then he paused, took a sip of water, and changed his tone. In recent months, we identified significant operational flaws in one of our pilot units. Flaws that, if not corrected, would compromise our entire planned international expansion. The most precise analysis of these problems didn't come from expensive consultancies. It came from someone who worked for a few weeks on the floor of the operation and saw what no one else was seeing. He gestured to Lauren. She stepped onto the stage with firm strides. She felt the gazes, the whisper of surprise. She saw Eleanor in the front row, her face contorted in disbelief. Lauren connected her laptop to the projector. The first image was a simple graph. Customer flow versus sales records at Vanderbilt Atelier over the last 12 months. The discrepancy was glaring. She began to speak, her voice clear without nervousness. During the time I worked as a saleswoman at Vanderbilt Atelier, I identified patterns that indicate a systematic loss of revenue, not because of individual incompetence, but because of structural flaws. Poorly managed inventory, unfavorable supplier agreements, and a visual organization that hides pieces instead of highlighting them. She moved to the next slide. Numbers, percentages, comparisons with international standards. I worked for 6 years in luxury boutiques in London, Paris, and St. Petersburg. I know the indicators that define success in this sector. Vanderbilt is operating below capacity due to correctable issues. If we expand now, we will replicate the same errors on a larger scale. One of the foreign investors raised his hand, speaking in English with a German accent. How did an operational-level employee have access to this data? Lauren responded in fluent English, then repeated it in basic German as a courtesy. I didn't have formal access. I observed, I recorded, and I cross-referenced it with previous experience. On the shop floor, you see what reports don't capture. You see customers entering and leaving without buying because the display is wrong. You see pieces sitting because they are in invisible places. You see the real volume of movement and then compare it with the register. The numbers don't add up. Eleanor stood up. The movement was abrupt, theatrical. She spoke loudly in English, with that tone of controlled indignation. This is absurd. An employee fired for cause, accused of theft, comes back here making grave accusations. Marcus, this is a disrespect to all of us, to the investors, to the image we built. Marcus didn't move. The accusation of theft was investigated. It was false. The coat was found exactly where it should have been, incorrectly recorded in the system. The firing was motivated by personal reasons, not professional ones. Lauren is here because her work is solid, not because she convinced me with words, but because she showed me facts. Eleanor looked around seeking support. Some gazes averted, others remained neutral. She tried another angle, now in Russian, as if seeking complicity from the Eastern European partners present. This is a farce. She is an opportunist trying to take advantage of a moment of weakness in the company. She has no credentials, no verifiable history. She is an intruder. Lauren waited for the silence to settle before responding. In perfect Russian, measured, without aggression. You tried to humiliate me in that language a few weeks ago, thinking I wouldn't understand. Now you try again, in front of people who perhaps do understand. But the question isn't about languages, it's about results. I presented data, you present discomfort. Which do investors choose based on? One of the Russian partners began to laugh, low but audible. Others followed. Eleanor realized she had lost, not the argument, the control. She sat down, her face red, her hands trembling slightly. Lauren continued the presentation. She showed restructuring proposals, an implementation schedule, and a return estimate. She spoke for another 15 minutes, answered technical questions in 3 languages, and demonstrated a mastery that left no room for doubt. When she finished, the applause was hesitant at first, but grew. Marcus approached, shook her hand in front of everyone, and announced that Lauren would take over as Director of Operations for International Expansion, reporting directly to him. In the following days, contracts were signed. Lauren got her own office, a team, and real autonomy. The first results began to appear within weeks. Deals were renegotiated, inventory was optimized, and margins were corrected. International partners who had previously hesitated began to respond with urgency. Sylvia resigned. Rachel was relocated to another unit. Jessica, the only one who had never been cruel, was given a chance to grow under new management. Helena remained Marcus Sterling's wife. She continued attending events, wearing the best dresses, and maintaining her smile. But her influence on the business ended. Investors began speaking directly to Marcus. Strategic decisions no longer passed through her. Social power remained. Real power changed hands. Lauren didn't celebrate anyone's fall. She just worked. She closed deals, opened markets, and transformed the operation that had been used to try to destroy her. Sometimes, sitting in her new office, she looked out the window and thought of all the time she had been underestimated, ignored, and sabotaged. Not with bitterness, with understanding. Because she knew now that silent competence always finds its moment. It just needs to survive until it arrives. If you believe that destiny can be rewritten, that love can flourish where it's least expected, and that even the greatest challenges can be overcome by those who cross paths in opposite worlds, then my stories have something to tell you. Come, dive into these tales of lives that meet and transform. The best is yet to come, and who knows, you might just find yourself in one of them. I have been narrating stories for a few years now, and it is a pleasure to share every chapter and every emotion with you. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and leave in the comments the city you are listening to these narratives from. I would love to know where you are coming from and how my words reach you there. Until next time.